This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in endorsed series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
For many years, some of the top young and upcoming racers from across the globe have made the trek to West Kingstown, England to showcase their skills behind the wheel of a Ford-powered single-seater car. Since 1972, drivers of current and older class Formula Fords alike have congregated together to do what they love, racing. This yearly festival has had many of its competitors move on to the higher levels of motorsport, including 14 who have raced in Formula 1, such as Eddie Irvine, Jan Magnussen, Mark Webber, and Jenson Button. Today, the major series gets to take its turn at taking part. This is the Formula Ford Festival, live on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hello everyone and welcome to the 13th race of the Major Series European Regions Pro Split season and its final wildcard round, live from iRacing's virtual Brands Hatch circuit. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside with the booth today is Christian Schauter and Samuel Ryman. Behind the scenes is our director Zach Johnson, and he's using cameras provided by the great Ducky Beard. Brands Hatch has hosted this event since the 1970s, 1976 to be precise. Let's learn more about this facility with our GSRC track guide.
Welcome to Brands Hatch. When popular British racing circuits get listed, this track just to the southeast of London often finds itself near the top. The extensive history of the venue has meant that many famous names in racing have ran laps here. But the stats make it sound deceptively simple, with the Grand Prix and Indy course having 9 and 6 turns respectively. Laps might be short, but they're also fast, and the corners are often a challenge to get right. As you'd expect, that means passing is quite difficult, with most drivers leaning towards sending one up the inside at Druids. You might occasionally see overtakes into the first corner, Paddock Hill Bend, but the blind apex and gigantic drop in elevation make that an errand for only the brave. Many of the corner names pay tribute to famous British drivers from the past decades, such as Hill, Surtees, Sterling, and Clark. In fact, the fame extends beyond the drivers, but to the cars as well, with this place seeing everything from Formula 1 to Formula Ford, touring cars, GT cars, motorcycles, and even rallycross. It's a gorgeously scenic venue where lush trees envelop the back half of the course, while the front half is mostly encapsulated inside a natural amphitheater. This makes it extremely popular with race fans who can see a majority of the circuit from many seating positions. With a great location near a major metropolitan hub, a spectator-friendly layout, and an experience that challenges drivers, you can see why this place remains abuzz with racing to this day.
That's a look at your GSRC track guide for Brands Hatch. Now first I turn to Christian, as today these drivers on iRacing, based on some of the various cars available, will be utilizing the Skip Barber Formula 2000. The question is though, how will they drive today here in England?
Well, we're running the short Indy version of Brands Hatch, but it's actually a deceptively tricky track. So it's only a 6-turn track, but Paddock Hill Bend, especially in a car such as the Skippy, where it's kind of prone to lift off oversteer, is going to be very, very tricky. But also Surtees and Clark Curve are going to be areas which are, again, deceptively tricky. It's only 6 turns, but it is quite a difficult track, actually. And lap time's under 1 minute, about 51 seconds. So it's going to be quite a quick race, obviously only 20 laps. Yeah, I expect to see a lot of action here today.
There are some heats involved with that as well, but we'll discuss that in just a little bit. But right now, it's important to talk about how the point standings have fared out, starting off with the driver's side of things, because the pro driver standings to battle for the Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year for the European Pro region comes down to simply this. A 10th or better from Dallas Pataska today clinches if Pete Herod wins. 18th or better for Pataska secures that if Pete Herod finishes second. Anything worse from Handsome Pete, third on back, Dallas Pataska wins the Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year. 37 points is that separation entering today. Everyone else is out of range to reach the top step on the championship podium, with Sam Harper looking to hold on to third, 3 points separating him and Kirk Crum. George Gruber rounds out the top 5. He's got an 8-point advantage for that position. Now, when it comes to the sportsman side of things, something to consider for that as well is this. Adam Fittipaldi, who has led the way much of the campaign, clinches today by just taking the grid. He enters today's round with a 32-point advantage over Sean Brown. Brendan Clunge, 36 points back. Jambroni, 64 back. And Stuart Elder rounds out the top 5 for the sportsmen. Separated by 67 total points amongst that top 5. There's also a clinch scenario for the Legends drivers today, as those are the drivers who are 50 years of age or older. David H. Baker clinches the John Kane Legends Trophy by taking the grid today. He enters the round 44 points ahead of Ray Partridge. Bob Beltrami, 86 points behind, is in third. Claude Belval and Richie Hearn round out the top 5 in the standings. Keep in mind, Richie Hearn performed that point total despite starting just 5 times this season. And there's also, keep in mind, a fierce championship battle for Legends Sport coming into today, because right now 4 drivers still have a chance at that trophy. Jambroni currently holds on to the standings lead, 14 points separating him and Colin Ward. Then it's Wolf Dietrich Hutho, followed by Simon Thorns. 22 points in separation amongst the top 4. As well, it's Peter Dahlmeier, who is 5th, entering today in Legends Sport, 81 points behind. Now, one thing to also talk about, Sam, is the fact that the team standings, there is still a lot that can happen there for both sides, according to race officials. Let's talk about the team standings, starting with the pro.
Yeah, and we'll bring those up for you now. And here you see only 31 markers between Grizzly and Bombshell at the top of a pro team standing. So that's definitely surmountable by the Bombshell racing team. That being said, obviously, if Grizzly had a really good day today, it would be difficult for Bombshell to catch up in the finale. But we'll see how things unfold. It's a bit of a smaller field here, currently just 21 cars. Every point counts. There's no drop weeks or anything along those lines. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that battle unfolds. And you see Grizzly, TFR, Daytona also hanging out in third. And then the top 3 really are a country mile ahead of everyone else in the pro team standings. But if we head on over to our second slide here, we'll also see we have a team championship for the sport team standings, and this one is a little bit more one-sided here for the Missed Apex F1 podcast Team 1 team. You see Hanson Brothers Racing are really going to have to basically finish 1, 2, 3, I think, at the next 2 races in order to catch up that much. So I think Missed Apex pretty much have this one in the bag, and you can see quite a massive spread actually, first, second, third, fourth and fifth. Although that being said, you never know what can happen in motor racing. Maybe these will look different by the time we go into our finale.
I'm very intrigued on how things play out. And as that car slams into the tire barrier, let's make our way over to today's race details, where drivers look to do not that what we've seen here in practice, but look to try and move their way through an interesting format that matches the real-world event for the Formula Ford Festival.
Yeah, so quite an interesting one today. There is a 5-minute 4-lap qualifying session which will determine essentially what heat you start in, along with your kind of heat starting position. And then there's 2 20-lap heats which will determine inside and outside row starting positions. And then from that, everybody today is going to advance through because we have less than 40 cars. And then finally, there is the 20-lap finale, which is the only 4-points race today. And although you have one fast repair, honestly, I feel like if you get involved in an incident in any of these races, it's going to really hurt you for your points chances today. But a 10 incident limit is obviously quite strict as well, especially with kind of how tight the racing is going to be. I definitely expect a lot of drafting down the front stretch and maybe even some bump drafting down the front stretch. So you're going to have to keep an eye on that. There might be a couple of guys who do actually run over that.
It's going to be interesting how things play out today, especially at Brands Hatch for these respective drivers. Currently, they still have about 6 minutes or so left in their final practice. Take a glance towards your weather conditions for today in that regard as well, because it is fairly cool, as it is October 30th in Sim Day today per the Real World event for 2021. As you see, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 degrees Celsius for the air temp. The track temperature 74 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 Celsius, and the winds are currently gusting around 10 miles per hour. That's around 16 kilometers per hour to the southwest. Humidity also fairly decent at 65% for today's action. So nice weather conditions, Samuel, for these drivers to work their way around.
Yeah, you said cool conditions. We're talking about cool conditions with regards to iRacing. Those are some of the lower numbers you see. If you went to England and saw a 70-degree Fahrenheit day in October, I think I'd be pretty happy about that. This is currently practice we're watching right now, so these times don't really matter a whole lot. Qualifying will be starting in just a few moments. And if you're an impatient viewer saying, hey, I just want to see a race, don't worry, it's coming up very shortly, because qualifying is only 5 minutes, so less than 10 minutes and we will be underway for the first of our heat races. And I'm going to take a different stand here as to what Christian said just a moment ago, where he was saying if you get involved in an incident, take a free repair, it's really going to ruin your day. I definitely agree with that in the feature race. However, I think you can still, I mean, it's obviously not ideal, but I think if you're involved in an incident in a heat race, if you can do a good job at recovering, if one of the heat races ends up being a bit ugly, you can still get a decent grid position, I think. Let's say you're running well in your heat race and then you get turned, you go from 2nd to 10th or 11th. If you can salvage a 6th place finish or so, you'll still be starting right up there in the middle of the field. So it's going to be interesting to see. There's going to be lots of different stories that could play out here.
I'm very curious on how all these stories play out, especially with some of the championship implications in play for today. As things currently progress on forward for this practice, we'd like to take the time to remind you of the charity being represented by this week's events. With the final wildcard round of the season, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They were the first humane society established in North America, and today they are one of the largest in the world. Last year alone, the ASPCA assisted more than 100,000 animals. For more information about the ASPCA, go to www.aspca.org. Currently less than 3 minutes to go in this final practice session before this qualifying gets underway. Keep in mind, Dallas Pataski is the quickest driver in the session. But I want to turn to you again, Christian, on this regard as well, because today could be intriguing on how you make the moves to make sure you try and keep things clean, driving-wise. Because as someone who had called, for example, the eNASCAR Invitational Series for the international drivers, that was chaos with the stock cars. How would that fare out today, though, is the question for the open wheelers.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be difficult to kind of pull away at all. Obviously, the car is very, very low power. It's very slow, relatively speaking, in a straight line. And even though the straights at this track are comparatively short to, say, a modern Grand Prix circuit, the front stretch is effectively quite long. So if you're even remotely in draft range, I'm fully expecting that you're going to be essentially stuck there, and the leader is essentially under threat the entire race. Now, as the leader, there's not really a lot you can do. Obviously, second place is kind of in a great spot, because all you have to do is you have to maintain that position until the last lap and be close enough coming off the final corner to sneak by and steal the victory. But I kind of actually want to come back to this point about if something happens in your heat race or whatnot. Now, I actually do agree with Sam on this because, yeah, every position is a row gained for the feature, and that's not trivial when you think about it. It's not like say everybody is advancing from one heat where you're only moving side to side. You are moving a row up because of how the double split with the heat format works. So yeah, it's definitely worth getting back out there and getting back going. And I also think that that's probably going to make the heats quite eventful as well, because there's a lot to be gained, you know. It's not a case of, oh, I'll move up one position. You're effectively moving up 2 positions. So it's worth being quite aggressive in your heat race, especially if you're starting towards the back. And something we haven't touched on yet is that we are doing a standing start today for all the races, so that's going to be quite interesting to see who nails that the best, because it is quite a critical component to well, pretty much any road course racing with a standing start. You know, you can either gain or lose a lot in how you pull the car away, so going to be keeping an eye out to see if anybody's particularly good at those, because as we get to the feature, that could really make or break your points day.
Drivers now are wrapping themselves up for practice here today for Brands Hatch Circuit and its Indy layout. Now it's time to just about get underway for qualifying. Of note, overall 20 drivers took time in session for practice. 21 were in the garage area. Kyle Graham, the only driver not to record a practice lap. The drivers now making their way towards the circuit now for qualifying, and this could be intriguing, Samuel, on how you handle this racetrack today, because there's different methods to getting your tires warm. You see, for example, some bobbling and weaving right off the pit lane, but also these laps lightning quick. As seen in practice, 51 seconds is the average for much of the field.
Yeah, and you've got 4 timed laps around here, and also if you do run into an issue, this is a funky thing about the Brands Hatch circuit. If you do run into an issue, as we ride on board Isaac Snyder here, the number 13 car. All right, let's try this again. If you do run into an issue on one of your qualifying attempts, that is a big problem, because not only do you lose that lap, but when you tow to the pits at Brands Hatch in qualifying and you exit the pits, you trigger another lap as you cross the start-finish line, because it's right there at the exit of pits. So there's multiple reasons why you don't want to run into a problem during your qualifying attempt here. But yeah, it's a very short track. These cars have very cold tyres when they go out on the circuit, and these drivers only have 5 minutes to get the tyres heated up and run a good lap. So we're riding on board Isaac here. I wouldn't be surprised if he's only doing it 95% here, because I think your hot lap is not going to be your first lap.
Your thoughts, Christian, as he tries to make his way through Sector 1 to the start of Sector 2?
Yeah, I think it's really, really critical to actually try and get all 4 laps in. So as soon as the session ticked over and the 5-minute countdown started, I would have gone out immediately, just for that whole deal. If you want to get tire temperature, you want to get them conditioned, and you really want to get that 4th lap in, because I think that 4th lap's going to be the quickest. Now, if you make a mistake and you spin, you don't have a lot of time to get the car back going, and obviously even worse, if you hit something, then you're going to have to do that reset, and that reset unfortunately puts you behind the starting line, so it triggers that next lap. And yeah, that's going to really, really hurt, because you're going to lose some performance by doing that, especially if you can only, say, do a 2-lap run. So even if you make a mistake and you spin or something like that, you just have to hope that you're not going to hit anything and that you're going to be able to continue on, because you really, really, really want to get that 4th lap in, or at minimum the 3rd lap, because those 3rd and 4th laps, they're going to be the ones that realistically take the pole.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt here, Justin, but Dallas Pataska, some of our viewers might have gotten confused why he ran a 55-second lap on lap 1 so early in the session. What he did at the very start of the session, he rolled out of the pits, was unhappy with the setting or something, so towed his car back into the pits and then rolled out again. That cost him a lap, so he's really only going to have 3 qualifying attempts here.
That's going to be very intriguing and a pretty critical mistake potentially, depending on how this qualifying wraps up and if the pace picks up for some for the 4th lap in particular. Vieira's satellite racing machine coming to the end of what is now his 3rd lap, moves up to a 51.861. He ran half a second quicker in practice, keep in mind, he does have the top step of the pylon for the time being by about 2/10 over Kurt Krum. And that's going to be so thoughtful to think about, but also keep this in mind. His championship rival for this race, the 21 Handsome Pete, is still in 5th, Christian, and some of these drivers are really trying to hold on to these cars to the point where they're nearly snapping loose and spinning.
Yeah, this is really what I was talking about in the track intro, where I was mentioning about lift-off oversteer, especially into turn 1. And I think that's something we've got to watch out for in the race. It's going to be very, very difficult for drivers to kind of know how much they can push on that first lap, and I think that's potentially where we're going to have carnage if we do, because it's going to be tricky. Everybody's got to take it easy, but it's just an opportunity to gain more positions if you're taking it a little bit less easy than everybody else. So I totally expect that we're going to see at least one car go around in Paddock Hill on the first lap. But yeah, especially, I mean, I've even noticed this in the SCCA Americas region races, that you've got to be kind of pushing to get the tires going, but you have to be very, very careful in those first couple of laps, because these are essentially kind of road tires in a way. So they're not really designed to be ready to go right as you kind of get out on track, and you've got to pretty much condition them in and whatnot. So yeah, it's tricky. It's harder, I think, than most people were probably expecting it to be.
Definitely is looking tricky. As to the top of the board, Kurt Krum, he tops Dallas Pataska in qualifying. As the last of the drivers have set their times, that's how quick the laps can be here at Brands Hatch. And with that, it's already time to head off into the first heat to try and set our grid for the feature today. Remember, the points will count for that feature race today. Kurt Krum will start on the pole for Heat 1 with Handsome Pete in second. Joshua Wolf and Travis Henderson start in Row 2, with Row 3 featuring Trevor Bobrovsky and Isaac Snyder. Wayne Hutchinson starts in 7th today alongside George Gruber, while Ryan Mayer and Tom Drailing round out the top 10. And of note, the last of the drivers that were set to be in this respective grid, Kyle Graham. He's currently now not at the paddock, so 10 drivers expected to make the standing start here for Heat number 1. Your quick final thoughts, Samuel, before we take the green lights in just a moment.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Christian mentioned a moment ago. These tires are very cold. These drivers will all be on top of each other. Paddock Hill could be a little bit tricky.
It's going to be very treacherous today for these respective drivers. For those enjoying the action so far today, I'd like to take the time to remind you that the Real World Formula Ford Festival takes place next weekend. Yes, October 30th to 31st for the 50th annual running of this event. Tickets are available for the full weekend admission for just £22 or $30.37 US. For adults, £13 or $17.89 for ages 13-15. Anyone can get in free under the age of 13. For more information, be sure to check out Brands Hatch's website to learn more. But these drivers are all set to go for Heat number 1 for the Formula Ford Festival for the Major Series in its European Pro region. Green lights are out. We're underway from England.
Well, the top 2 got single file very quickly, but on Row 2, and a great start by Travis Henderson, but he gets a little wiggly going through paddock. He was looking for 3rd place, though.
And several drivers trying to go 2 by 2. Joshua Wolf gets shunted. He's off to the tire barriers for the first crash of the day. Everyone else drives on by, but Joshua Wolf, significant damage in through Druids.
It looked like he just got a bit of a tap from Isaac Snyder there, just enough to send him off into the corner. Unfortunately, not able to stop before he got into that barrier.
Indeed, and that is not the start.
Oh, well, Henderson.
Looking for. And that's an error mistake, yes indeed, for Henderson. He's off to the sand trap through clear ways. As they make their way through Clark Curve, several drivers, such as Tom Drailing, taking advantage to pass on by. Henderson is now all the way back to 9th position after starting inside the top 4. But the top 2 have broken away already by more than 2 seconds after the craziness to start things off, Christian.
Yeah, those 2 got a really good start. Were able to get single file and just took it very, very easy, but weren't involved in the chaos behind. Obviously, unfortunately for Henderson obviously went off towards the end of the lap, but the TFR guys have really not had a good start to this race, with Joshua Wolf going off in essentially the first turn.
Some of those TFR machines and some of the bombshell cars you see in the backdrop as well are currently in the midst of some wrestling matches too for third, fourth, fifth on back at the moment. So they continue to hold each other up a little bit there in terms, Samuel. They're now back single file, but they spent the past couple laps, for the most part, side by side through Sector 1.
Yeah, it's definitely been quite a bit dicey and scary here at times in the middle of the field. I really thought Travis Henderson's incident was going to be more than just a single car slide. It looked like there were going to be a couple of cars collected when that happened, and see another car going off there at Paddock Hill. By the way, shout out to Joshua Wolf. He was able to drive that car around the rest of the lap, come into the pits, got his free repair. He had tyres and fuel deselected. He pretty much just rolled through pit road. It wasn't much more than a drive-through. So if there is any more carnage up front, Joshua Wolf may still be able to salvage a position or two.
That'll take a little bit of luck, keep in mind, though. He's 31 seconds back of the race leader, more than 20 behind the rest of the pack, to the point where he's in Sector 1. Everyone else is at the start and finish line currently. Keep in mind, though, that battle for third position is heating up quickly down that front straightaway. Here comes Snyder. He's been one of the more aggressive drivers in this heat so far. A dive through Paddock Hill Bend. Tries to clear on forward and nearly goes off. One does go off of the backdrop, meanwhile. Ryan Mayer just slid off to the sand as they go side by side into Druids.
Yeah, people starting to push Paddock Hill Bend a little bit more now, and you can get away with running through that gravel trap, but Isaac Snyder still on the inside here. Some contact.
And a crash. Gruber spun around. The third place machine in the 123 is off into the grass. And something looks a little bit bent there. He is stuck.
Yeah, and he toes. Now, how badly damaged is Isaac's car? Because he's being challenged for third place now, and that's the second drive Isaac had gotten into. Normally, I'd say, calm down, buddy. It's a long race, but the reality is it's not a long race. It's a 20-lap sprint, and Isaac Snyder definitely driving a bit aggressively right now. His car's still holding up, though, apparently.
Snyder now drops back to fourth position with Trevor Roski making the move. As Ryan Mayer play this, he elects to stay safe. One of the drivers right on behind, Wayne Hutchinson, trying to late break his way to catch up to this gap. And this is one of the more intriguing things to think about too, Christian, is for a lot of these drivers, it's fighting for track position, some in the case of having fun as well, but they've really fallen behind the leaders to the point where they're 3 corners behind from the wrestling that they've done with their cars and each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing where if you can break out of the draft, because you can see the second pack, they're all tied together, and the leaders are tied together as well. Kurt Crumb's not getting away from Pete Harrod, no matter realistically what he does, but the second pack is also tied to each other because of the draft, and that's crucial, you know, especially if we get to the feature and there's an opportunity for, say, a little checkup behind you and then to kind of really break away. You've got to really push, and especially on those first couple of laps where the car's quite tricky to drive, that's, you know, there's a lot of risk reward there, and we've already seen really with Isaac Snyder. He's not made any friends, I don't think, in the TFR camp today, but, you know, he is up in 4th spot, and he did start in 6th, and he's probably not there in the way that he would have liked to have been there, but he has been rewarded for being aggressive on those opening few laps.
He's holding himself into a fairly decent position now amongst this respective pack. Again, 3rd through 6th separated by about 1 second. Travis Henderson is still about 2 seconds behind this as a result of the mistakes. Dom Dorelling is 16 seconds back of the leader. So now this is the chess match, I should say, portion of this race, where you wait for the chances to make moves such as this one. Snyder tries to dive to the inside. Bobrovsky forced to the left side, this time towards Graham Hill Bend. Is able to defend, but that still kind of showcases you're waiting for that one chance to be able to make the pass. Druids is one of the better passing spots today, Sam, but it's also one of the more dangerous spots.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with the low power of this Skip Barber car, every turn can be a passing opportunity, and I think we've seen that come to fruition a few times this race. The thing that's really surprising about this race, of course, is the fact that the heat is just as long as the feature. It's a bit of a lengthy race for only a 10-car qualifying race. That'll I'm sure these drivers aren't going to complain, though, because even though we had a lot of chaos and events in the opening laps, now they can try and find a rhythm, and maybe there's a couple of things these drivers will be picking up on how they can drive the circuit, how their rivals are driving this circuit, that maybe they'll be able to use when it does come feature time.
That's a really good point to think about, absolutely, that learning process. And in turn, I think, Christian, that's partly why Handsome Pete, for example, is just saying, you know what, I'm just going to ride. Hasn't really closed up the gap too much. The back end of Kurt Crum has just stayed stationary about 4/10, just trying to keep that margin around that mark.
Yeah, I mean, like, you've got to look at it from this perspective. Where's he going to go? You know, if he's the leader, okay, yeah, that's cool, but he's just going to basically sit there for 10 laps and then get passed on the last lap, probably, you know? So why this is one of those situations where if you are second, you can kind of always have that whole deal of, I'll just ride in second place and then attack with 5 to go. There's no real point in impressing the issue at this stage of the race. They've got such a margin on third. It's the opposite. It's too much risk for pretty much no reward.
I was about to lead into that, actually, because that was kind of the thought too, where some drivers will just wait for those final couple laps for that opportunity. That's, of course, in contrast, as we've seen, between third on back, where, as you see, Snyder was able to take third position this lap. The thing is, Bobrovsky is not giving up, and they're starting to scrape a little bit of their side pods too along the edges of the racetrack. That's something I picked up on, Sam, in practice, was some of the drivers were getting some bodywork damage from how close they are to the track, as well as how close they're trying to battle, such as this. For third position again, they weeble wobble through the corner. Out of Druids, Snyder nearly gets clear, but the preferred line stays in the hands of the 10.
Yeah, well, Snyder actually made that move stick last lap around. He started the previous lap in 4th place, made a nice clean pass on Trevor in Druids last lap. Druids has taken it back on the front straight, and Isaac now looking for 3rd place here. And, I mean, a bit of me is a little concerned here because of the incidents we've seen Isaac involved in so far. But I'm starting to wonder if these drivers want to be doing this, if they're actually using this as practice to get comfortable with racing each other in the feature. If things do go south here, yeah, you're going to lose a few spots on the grid, but rather learn the hard way now.
Or you can clip the grass in the sand. Snyder spins around, and that just hit the incident cap for Snyder.
Yeah, that makes sense when you think about it. He's already had 2 4X contacts with the TFR cars this race, so that would have been his 3rd, taking him up to 12 and over that 10 limit.
So he's now done for the heat race and will essentially drop him to the bottom of the pylon. Well, that was unexpected for that group, probably, as Bobrovsky now leads this pack. Wayne Hutchinson is now up to 4th position as a result of all that carnage.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were talking about just a moment ago how the top 2 are willing to run single file. Isaac was not willing to do that, and I can only assume he was doing it so that he could learn when to make passes during the actual race, because he could have easily just sat in 4th place there and tried to make a move for 3rd on the final lap or so, but that's not the way he played it. That's a risk he took, and obviously paid the price as we see one car rolling out of the pits here.
That's Ryan Mayer, who was amongst those cars in that pack before that significant spin around. And yes, he was the car who got the front wing damage. So that is the reason the 915 just came off the pit lane. That drops Mayer right behind Tom trailing. In 7th is Mayer. Now looking towards the front grouping once more, 8 laps to go for this respective heat. In the game of cat and mouse, starting to see Handsome Pete pick up the pace a bit. He's now turning faster laps the majority of the times, the past couple. In fact, he set the fastest lap time so far, Christian, a 51.490 now.
Yeah, and I think with 5 to go, we'll see him really start to try and mount an offensive. And you know, this is worth it. This is for pole in the feature. And yes, okay, we've seen that you can kind of swap draft with the leader, so to speak, but it's still the best place to be, especially on the start. You know, you get to go through Paddock Hill and Druids as the leader. You have the least chance that you're going to be involved in an incident. So yeah, absolutely, you want the pole for the feature, even if you are then quite easy to pass.
See the differences in lines just a touch bit as well as Smith, or Kurt Crum, I should say, flips a bit of the sand trap. Oh, a big loose moment there. Kurt Crum nearly spun it around for a moment. Handsome Pete had to check up in the middle of Druids that time.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a sign that Pete is getting a little bit more aggressive there. It seemed like he kind of threw it into Druids. Because I don't think, Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, I haven't really seen Pete attempt it here, but I'm not sure if his front straight is long enough for him to take a move coming to the line.
I think it's just long enough if he's right on the rear wing exiting the final corner. But yeah, I think the best opportunity is to be close starting lap 20 so that he can go for the opportunity into Druids and maybe clear and take the lead through there, and then go for the defense. That's how I would play this. But you see there, he's gone very, very deep actually into Druids. So maybe he's trying to see what he can do through there already with 6 to go.
As we've seen, though, it depends what part of the corner you get side by side, especially through Druids down Halewoods Hill. But now these drivers make their way through Surtees, through the Leclerc into Clearways. 5 to go. When does Handsome Pete make the move to try and secure pole position for the Formula Ford Festival for the Major Series? It's European Pro Split. 5 to go. Now at the stripe.
I'm just looking down the order here, assuming it's going to be the provisional finishing order, thinking how exciting it's going to be watching Isaac Snyder charge his way through a full field of 20 cars when the feature race comes, and the first drivers he's going to have to get by are the ones who are probably not too pleased with him right now.
Potentially, to say the very least right now, especially being the first driver of the day to reach the very strict 12 incident point limit for the day.
I just want to add here, Justin. I'm not. Well, I am harping on Isaac a little bit for being, aggressive and all that. But that being said, we appreciate him sharing his camera with us, and we appreciate him putting on the show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes, because at the end of the day, I can understand why he's trying to take a risk during the heat race. It's just going to be really interesting to knowing how aggressive he is willing to race, to see how he carves his way through the field in the feature.
Keep in mind, he's won a race this season. Specifically a round, I should say, in 11 starts. In fact, he's finished in amongst the top 5 3 times by the end of events. The main thing has just been the consistency round to round in that regard. Had seen him come into today 21st points. 3 to go this time for the battle for the race lead. 15 seconds the gap, plenty of distance. Amongst the rest, the pack of note, Trevor Borowski has secured that third position now by 1.6 seconds pending mistakes.
Oh, sorry, Christian. Speaking of mistake, Ryan Maher just made one out of paddock, and that's going to cost him 7th place to Joshua Wolf. These are 2 cars that both took a free repair, and they've came out on circuit together.
Well, that's actually exactly the battle I was about to pick up on, and this comes back to what you were saying, Sam, about if you do have an incident, you can recover. And Joshua Wolf, okay, so he's 7th in this race. He's going to start 14th in the feature, but it's worth it. 3 rows further forward than he would have, and he just retired the car.
The main thing is, though, remember, Joshua Wolf had his incident on lap 1, so we had plenty of time to be able to recover on forward. The main thing to think about, too, is the 915 was nearby the 54 at one point. He ended up dropping 4 seconds back behind Tom Trailing before that respective pass for 7th. But there's now 2 laps to go for the race leaders. They have now reached the front straightaway. Handsome Pete in our fastest lap time, 51.364. In fact, both of them were in the 51.3s last time by. However, it was Handsome Pete who had the incident-free lap. So keep that in mind. Kurt Crum is using up a couple incident points amongst these laps to make sure he keeps this pace up.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. Although it must be said, when you run as far as they do on the AstroTurf, on the exit of the hill there, that does not give you an incident point. This track is quite liberal with its track limits. So we're about to start the final lap with our two leaders here. We're going to keep the cameras on them, but we should make a note that that battle for 7th we were watching may become a battle for 6th. Those two are catching Tom Draylen.
It's the battle for 4th, but the white flag is out for the race leaders. Final lap, and here comes the attempts. Towards the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, Handsome Pete forced to check up. He's able to avoid the sand trap. Now, can he find a way to get back up to Kirk Crum? He sends it in hard. Crum slams the door shut. They run against the curbs through Druids. To Grand Hill Bend they go, with Crum holding on to a 0.4 of a second advantage. Final few corners now for Handsome Pete to close. Now off to Surtees. He'd hurried a little bit more aggressive to the curbs, tries to late brake, heading out of McLaren to clear ways. To the Clark curb for the final time. Checker flag waves for heat number 1. Kirk Crum holds on defensively to win over Handsome Pete to secure pole position for today's feature event. And some of the other battles now on the racetrack as well. This is the 7th place fight. That battle for 4th position stayed stationary, but this one staying busy, Sam. Look at that 12 machine. He wants that 9:15 spot back.
Yeah, he wants it back because he just gave it up. He ran wide on the exit paddock, got in the gravel, it sent his car sideways, and Brian got by. I think they might have been trying a little bit too hard to catch Tom Draylen. Yeah, here we go. They're going to be side by side.
An error mistake from Reimer, side by side, coming up to the stripe. Again, this is for 7th. Near dead even on the speeds. At the stripe, a photo finish for 7th position goes to Wolf by 1/100th of a second. And that was a thrilling end to the first heat of the day. Once again, it's Crum, Handsome Pete, Vronsky, Hutchinson, Henderson, the top 5, followed by Draylen, Wolf, Mayer, Gruber, Snyder, who rounded out that top 10. Quickly, though, the drivers are already making their way to the grid for heat number 2 in record fashion. It's about time to take a look how those drivers will come into play. Dallas Pataska starts the front row with Ross Banfield to his outside, with Sam Harper in 3rd, with David Mulnerich in 4th. That's a quick look towards the glance. Cologne, Mickey, Barnes, Partridge, Martzoff, and Baker also in this race. Green flag is out, and green lights are off. We're underway for heat number 2 from Brands Hatch. And they really wanted to get to this grid in fast. They gridded within 20 seconds, the quickest starting formation of the day so far. But quickly, Pataska is under defensive measures. To the inside, Ross Banfield. He gets alongside the right rear tire of the 23. Pataska, though, clear this time, entering Graham Hill Bend for the first lap. He makes a mistake, though. Banfield now tries to make the pass. Side pod damage now for Pataska. He struggled with that in practice as Banfield takes the lead on the first lap.
Yeah, I think this race, everybody's going to stay much more connected. We didn't have that incident after Paddock Hill Bend like we did in the first heat, so everybody is in the draft train here.
Keep this in mind, David H. Baker did make this respective grid. As long as he makes the feature event, he will secure by the end of today the John King Legends Trophy. He's currently in 9th position. Meanwhile, Pataska is under attack for 2nd position. To the right side of the racetrack in the Druids, it's David Mulnerich who had the fastest time in practice much of the session. The 69 has looked comfortable in this machine, and he wants that 2nd spot this time, though he elects to go single file, but Sam Harper nearly hit him.
Yeah, and it looks like the momentum is finally swinging back into Pataska's favour. He did not have a great opening lap there, and he's sitting about a second back of a race lead, but now he's been able to hold off David. And by the way, David started 4th, went straight up into 3rd right at the start. I remember similarly, Travis Henderson, who started... Sorry, not Travis Henderson. Pete Herod, who started... well, what I'm getting to here is that the driver who started 4th each race has gotten off to a great start both races, so that might not be a bad good spot.
Oh, look at that slide, though, from Pataska. Major save from Dallas Pataska. Here comes the dive from the inside again from the 69.
Yeah, it's quite a critical mistake there by Pataska. I can see that he's trying to close the gap to Banfield, but actually every time they're going side by side, it's allowing Banfield to escape, all while stacking everybody up more and more for the second spot. And it was just a little bit too wide coming through paddock there, and had to actually jump out of the gas to save the car.
That's absolutely incredible driver control. Still the separation amongst the top 7, making near 0.8 of a second. The top 7 all covered by 2.6 seconds currently. Of note, Cordell Colon lost several seconds as a result of a mistake in the sand trap. He's also dealing with technical issues. Ray Partridge, David H. Baker have also lost the tow. But the battle for second is not over. Pataska nearly did it again. Left side tires in the sand. Monirowicz again side by side through Druids. This time Pataska trying to squeeze as Monirowicz tries to flare up.
Yeah, boy, this is really tight.
And now Sam Harper's getting impatient too. He wants to go here too, Sam. The problem is there's no space to go with the 69 trying to race the whole racetrack.
Yeah, and the problem is, as they're doing this, it's great to watch. It's great clean racing so far. We'll see if it stays that way. But of course, Banfield is just able to pull away from this pack of cars. But we see Pataska keeps making the same mistake coming out of paddock. Hopefully, for his sake, he'll get it cleared up this time. And I think that's why all the drivers are getting a bit annoyed with him. By the way, you would have heard the pit siren go off last lap. That was for Cordell Corin. He came into the pits and has retired from the race.
So that adds to the DNF list. In fact, first DNF officially, we had one DNS and Kyle Graham. Now the separation amongst first and second, 1.5 seconds, and Pataska continues to slide around, it seems, every entry and almost every exit, Christian. What can he do to try and get his rhythm back here? He is running up to 9/10 off the pace to Banfield so far.
Yeah, and I think the problem for him is that he's just constantly having to basically mirror drive Malneritz because he's so close to him. You know, like the last couple of times he's had the error in Paddock Hill, it's pretty much been because he's been forced to the outside, so he doesn't really want to go as far to the inside, and that just kills the exit of the corner for you. And you see here a little bit of a defensive move. You know, covered the inside and then moved to the outside late in the corner, but again, it just compromises his line every single time, and Malneritz is there ready to take advantage of that. And all the while this is happening, Banfield is really just able to drive away. I mean, it doesn't look a huge margin, but that's a commanding advantage in a car such as this, where the driver separation isn't that large to begin with. And obviously with not that many laps, running down 1.5 seconds, which is actually now kind of bouncing up and down between 1.5 and 1.8, it's not trivial. It'll be very, very difficult for Pataska to actually close this down without having to watch his rearview mirror at the same time.
I was going to ask about what they could do to try and close up, and it definitely looks like it could be difficult amongst this grouping. Once again, though, Sam Harper tried to go a little bit deeper in the brakes through Paddock Hill Bend. Now down Hale Woods Hill. The defensive lines are now having to be played this time more so by the 69. He's now starting to have to mirror drive to keep an eye on Harper and Mickey in his back end.
Yeah, these drivers have all single filed out for now, but we remember they were all on top of each other a few laps ago, so I don't anticipate it to stay this way for much longer. By the way, Cordell Cologne, that's his name, I completely butchered it earlier, so giving him his due respect there, although unfortunately, as we mentioned, he is out of his heat race. Could always come back in time for the feature, we shall see. But yeah, Dallas Pataska, for whatever reason, here we come up to Paddock Hill again. This whole pack 1.5 seconds back of Banfield. At this point, I'm almost thinking they're not going to catch Banfield, but we'll see if he proves me wrong. And that lap, Pataska finally looked a bit more comfortable through paddock. But it's one of those turns on iRacing, and I'm going to assume it's the same in the real life, where you're never really fully comfortable, I feel, through that turn. It's always a bit of a tricky one. For anyone who's just got iRacing and who hasn't been to Brands Hatch yet, it almost kind of gives off the same kind of vibe as turn 6 at Laguna Seca.
Your thoughts on that, Christian?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, Paddock Hill is just a completely fierce corner, to be honest. I mean, in any car, it's quite sketchy. But in something such as the Skippy, which is quite prone to lift off oversteer, is kind of doubly bad. You know, I'm pretty glad that we're not racing the Spec Racer Ford here. For example, as we see again, Pataska having to go to the outside, and every time he's doing this, it's just costing this whole group time. Everybody jumping to the inside now. Harper even making a move there.
Thought it was going to go 3 wide for a second, Christian, as Monerwich nearly makes tire-to-tire contact with Pataska. Pataska still gets the run, and that side-by-side alone just cost them 0.4 of a second in the span of 3 corners.
Yeah, I think Banfield's got the race sorted here unless he makes any mistake. But again, we're only halfway through this battle. Let's not forget, this isn't just a battle for 2nd to 6th. This is a battle from 4th on the grid to 12th on the grid, and that's actually quite a massive difference. I also want to make a note here that I have won the Spec Racer Ford race on iRacing at this configuration.
Congratulations. Also, Cordell Colon is back on the racetrack after his technical issues, so he, after nearly 5 minutes, seems to have sorted out the problem that was massively plaguing him. Meanwhile, a mistake in the battle for 2nd. Pataska locked up the brakes. He's now under attack for the 3rd position. Harper side by side with him. Pataska forced to take it very tight on the Kirby. Now Eric Mickey zips on by. Here comes Brian Barnes to join the party as well.
This is great for David. All these guys are scrapping for 3rd place now. He's just pulling away in 2nd.
Now more than 2.2 seconds is that advantage. In fact, Pataska's still not giving up though. Remember, Pataska needs to essentially finish fairly strongly. If, say, you see the performance seen from Handsome Pete from Heat 1 again, and Handsome Pete, say, comes up for the race lead. In our words, for Pataska, there's still the pressure of making sure he's got a decent starting position to make sure he's in the right position to clinch, Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I kind of think that that was maybe, obviously it was a mistake the way he went wide there at Druids, but, you know, that's got to be something he just has to think about. Like, I mean, I know Dallas and I know he'll want to win, and this is going to be immensely frustrating to him that he's kind of slipped back, but at the same time, he just needs a relatively decent result here to lock this up. So it's better to give up the spots and maybe, say, shoot for just taking a top 5. And hope that that's going to be enough to lock it up for him here.
To remind you of that specific math for when the feature comes into play, that's when the points are scored. And when it comes to this series, 10th or better, Pete Herod wins. 18th or better if Handsome Pete is 2nd. Handsome Pete, if he finishes 3rd or worse, essentially hands Pataska the title. Speaking of things switching around, it's Pataska up to 3rd with a good move on Harper.
He's got a bit of front wing damage, I think. Let's see if we can get a camera here.
You're right. Right front wing.
Yeah, on Pataska's car. He's bent it up a little bit over the curbs.
And he picked that up a couple laps ago amongst all the fighting. You know that major slide where he had a bit of the saves? It was the lap after that where he bottomed out so hard that he clipped that little edging. So that may explain a bit why there's the speed discrepancy for the past 5 or so. But remember, he's been doing this, essentially all this fighting on that spot there for the entire race, and that's where cars have to be careful, it seems, to avoid bottoming out like that.
By the way, I want a spare thought for Brade Partridge right now, because he's running in 9th place, about 20 seconds back of leader. Man, if he'd been in the first heat race, 20 seconds back of leader, he would have finished about 5th.
Just the luck of the draw, right? Well, you never know with racing. That's the main thing, like you said, Samuel.
Yeah, we'll see how things unfold in the feature. And of course, this isn't over yet. This battle for 3rd to 6th is still intense. A couple of these guys might not make it all 8 laps. Of course, we hope they do, but they might not.
Down to 7 to go, so they made one of those 8. Sam Harper now the quickest lap time, officially on the board. Still, Harper wants to find a way inside the top 3 again. That would be for 6th position for the feature race. That takes place right after these respective heat races, pending the 5-minute warm-up period. Don't forget as well, Eric Mickey, Brian Barnes are also riding on behind as well, and those drivers have also showcased that they've wanted to go, but just nowhere for them to go. Compared to, say, Harper, who looks more comfortable as these tires have heated up and built up more runs and laps on them, Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And they have started to spread out just a little bit, but I do think that Harper's got a good chance of this third spot. And depending on how much they fight, you know, it's going to bring those guys behind back into it a little bit. Obviously, Eric, Mickey, Brian Barnes are quite close. Barnes having a huge moment, though, entering Paddock Hill. It's a great save. So he's going to slip back just a little bit now, but still, you know, that's all it takes. It just takes one corner of side-by-side for a pair of cars, and then it's so much slower to do that it pulls everybody behind back in. And that's really what we were seeing towards the start of the race with Pataska. He was never able to kind of run his own race. Malneritz was just harrying him the whole time, and eventually Pataska had to basically give it up, and now it's gone a bit more single file and spread out.
5 to go this time by the race lead differential, 2.2 seconds as well still for Ross Banfield to secure outside front row positioning. Standing start for the feature race for the Formula Ford Festival here for the Major Series. Keep in mind though that David Mladenowicz is slowly starting to try and chip away at it. Did pick up a 10th last time with that fastest lap in the right corner of your screens. It's going to take a lot, though, remember, for this to fully close. It will take a few mistakes. There is the differential. They've been near identical much of these past lap times. He even lost a 10th a couple ago.
Yeah, just a few hundredths there, really, he picked off that lap. And honestly, I was about to say a couple of laps ago, pretty much everyone in the top 6 ran a 51.5. Last lap, it was a little bit more spread out, and the battle for 3rd through 6th has broken up a bit. I wouldn't say it's over yet. I think it could definitely still be back on. But I wanted to say during the middle of a race that I would have been in Brian Barnes' shoes, kind of just hanging out at the back end of a pack, waiting at the back of that pack, waiting for everyone to have each other off. But now you see the consequence of doing what Brian's done, if he was doing that intentionally, is that because he's just been hanging out at the back of a pack, as soon as it's broken up, he's having difficulty keeping with them, and it looks like he will finish 6th place, and you know, that's only going to be 12th on the grid.
Still decent around mid-pack for today, but as we've seen, the mid-pack can get pretty crazy here at Brands Hatch. Looking at some of the TR drivers make their way towards the final couple laps, 3 to go with this time at the stripe, as Harper has nearly slipped a full second behind now for Dallas Pataska. And Pataska seems to have finally gotten into a rhythm, Christian, although it's taken him 15 plus laps to be able to get to the point where he can actually get some breathing space with a car not within a 10th or within a second rather of him.
Yeah, exactly, and I'm actually kind of surprised at how much it's spread out now that Pataska isn't at the head of that line, you know? I mean, we're used to seeing him being very, very quick and pulling away from packs, not kind of building them up behind him, but this is going to be interesting in the future to see if everybody spreads out like this as well. And one driver I'm actually really keen to keep an eye on in the future is Malneritz, because you mentioned that he had the fastest time in practice. He's looked very, very fast in this race. I think he could have challenged Banfield had he not been essentially forced to drop back early on with that battle with Pataska, but I mean, he's going to be starting 4th in the feature, and I think he can make something happen here. I think he can maybe even win this.
I want to add to that, Christian, that's where he started this race from, was 4th on the grid, and that was a great place for him. He was able to get a great launch. I think there's something special about that grid spot.
Speaking of special, that paint scheme that's fighting side by side is pretty special in the regards of, if you like, apparently cheese covering broccoli. That is Colin Martzoff moving up to 7th position to pass by David H. Baker in that side by side battle out of Druids and Graham Hill Bend. White flag is out, final lap for heat number 2 as the Skip Broccoli Recheesing car tries to hold on to that spot. Ross Banfield trying to hold on to a 1.8 second difference between him and the 69.
I think I'm going to call these cars Skip Broccolis from now on.
It's a car covered in cheese with broccoli on it. It's very punny. Those cars are fighting, by the way, for 7th still, but for Ross Banfield, everyone else fought behind him, and he took advantage to run away after passing Dallas Pataska early in the first lap. And now, he'll secure the outside front row for the feature race today for the Formula Ford Festival. Checker flag waves. UDOC's machine for Ross Banfield wins Heat 2.
Yeah, the battle for 7th is still the one that's on.
Norwich secured second, Pataska third, Harper fourth, followed by Mickey and Barnes. And that battle with that broccoli machine holds on to the inside. No, a bit of a peek now from Baker. Baker tries to get the slipstream for 7th position. Side by side, it's Martzov who does secure that position. Baker, Partridge, and Cologne rounding out the 10 drivers in this respective heat.
And yeah, you can call David Baker Patrick Starr because he is saying, you win this round, Broccoli. I hope one person gets that reference.
I think that episode was in the early 2000s. Race results for heat number 2. Banfield wins by 1.8 seconds. Norwich, Pataska, Harper, and Mickey round out the top 5, with Barnes, Martzov, David Baker, Partridge, Cologne rounding up the top 10. Give a shout out to Cordell Cologne. He returned to the track after several pit stops and having to pull off for 5 minutes due to technical problems, Christian. He still came out and finished the race, although he will start last.
Yeah, that was great to see. And actually, I really feel for him because he was obviously quite quick. He qualified 5th in that second heat race, and he didn't make the greatest of getaways, in fairness, so he was already off to kind of a bad start. But then obviously the technical difficulties really made it a bad race for him. But you know, starting back there in essentially last position for this feature, it's going to be interesting to see if he can move through. I think he can. I think his goal has to be to try and get himself up to the back end of the top 10. And, you know, if everybody stays connected early on, which I think they will do, I think he should have a good shot at doing that. As we've seen, the 20 laps doesn't sound like that long of a race, but it definitely, especially once you get past kind of that 10th lap, it does seem like there's still a lot of racing time to go. So it's not going to be sewn up by turn 1, that's for sure.
Especially since some of the championship contenders are in various different positionings. Pete Herod start 3rd, Dallas Pataska in 6th, but the green flag flies and the green lights go out for the feature race. With that, we'll take a quick step aside. We'll be back in about 2 minutes from now. I'll break things down for the Formula Ford Festival. You're watching the Major Series European Regions Pro Split live on the Global Sim Racing channel from iRacing's virtual Brands Hatch circuit.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12 Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to GSRC's coverage of the Major Series in its European Pro region and its respective split to see who can come away in the final wildcard round of the season for the Formula Ford Festival from Brands Hatch Circuit on iRacing. Justin Prince with you along with Christian Chowder, Samuel Ryman, with Zach Johnson in the director's seat for today's action. As we're just moments away from today's racing, 20 laps is the feature race distance, and the points are scored there. The championships are on the line for some. The Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year could be decided in less than 20 to 30 minutes time here at this track. Drivers are wrapping up their warm-up session before they get ready to hit the grid for today's action. It's going to be curious to see who wins the second to last round overall of 2021. Warm-ups are officially concluded here from Brands Hatch. It's time to take a quick look at how we'll start for today's race. Drivers have less than about 2 minutes to make it to the grid, and as a result of the heats, here is how they will be sorted. Kurt Crum starts the pole today, with Ross Banfield starting second. Then it'll be Hanson Pete and Devin Minorwich in row 2. Trevor Brodsky, Dallas Pataska, row 3. Wayne Hutchinson and Sam Harper, row 4. Travis Henderson, Eric Mickey in row number 5, Samuel.
Yeah, and then starting in 11th place will be Tom Draylin ahead of Brian Barnes. Joshua Wolf will start 13th ahead of Carlin Marzolf. Ryan Mayer will start 15th ahead of David Baker. And then we got George Gruber and Ray Partridge on row number 9. Isaac Snyder and Cordell Cologne will round out the top 20. I don't believe Kyle Graham is here, and there we go, a bit of a technical issue. There's a back end of the field. So 3 things to watch for here, I think, are David starting from 4th place. His start, Dallas Pataska, can he get through paddock okay? And of course, coming through the field.
The feature race for the Formula Ford Festival is underway from Brands Hatch. As the start, nice and clean for a majority of the field. Kurt Crum trying to round the bottom of the circuit. Banfield quickly saws off the 21's front wing. Minorwich also follows on behind. First side-by-side at the front of the field. Banfield tries to get the outside. Can't get towards the left rear tire for the exit, though, of Druids to Graham Hill Bend for the first time. Lead pack stays single file into Sector 2.
Well, that was a much cleaner start than I'd anticipated, as we do have a spin out the back, single car spin, but of course the tyres aren't fully up to temperature yet.
Despite that spin, keep in mind David H. Baker has clinched the European region's John King Legends Trophy by taking the grid. That's while Adam Fascipanti, with the sportsman side of things, if he ended up taking the grid in that respective class, secured that championship. So Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year is still the major talking point. Pete Herod stayed in 3rd of the first lap. Dallas Pataska stayed in 6th. The top 7 have remained grouped together. 8th on back have fallen on behind by more than a second already, Christian.
Yeah, and a very, very clean start, actually. Very surprised that we didn't see any incidents going down into Druids or Paddock Hill. So I guess everybody learned through their heats. And now just single file, really, from the front of the field on back. Oh, big incident, actually, just after saying how clean it had been.
That was the 8th place car, Eric Mickey, who had been fighting very hard, Samuel, right before that incident. But the thing is, he spun the whole way through Graham Hill Bend and nearly took Brian Barnes with him.
Yes, 2 single car spins on the opening 2 laps, and both down that corner. So we kind of ran a little bit short on time than I anticipated coming to grid. I was going to say the drive I was really looking forward to seeing carve through the field, of course, is Isaac Snyder. He's up from 19th to 13th, but we got the battle for the lead.
Side by side as Banfield shows that speed he had early on in his heat race, but Kurt Crum showcases his speed from heat 1, keeps the race lead, but Banfield goes for the crossover. Heading to Surtees as Handsome Pete now lines up behind. Banfield keeps his foot in the throttle. To the high side through McLaren to Clearways. He drifts all the way out of the marbles, and Kurt Crum slips his way back up to the lead for the start and finish straight. How will this fare out at the end of this respective lap to the start of the next one, though, is the question as Banfield keeps up the pressure. and nearly hits its tires and does. They slam each other and check each other up. 3 wide for the race lead.
Great move by Pete Herod, sensing the opportunity there. Great car control by the two drivers, banning wheels. It's not something you normally get away with in an open wheel car, but Pete Herod to the lead, still 3 wide all the way through Druids.
And Dallas Pataska sees a chance to try and keep up with his championship rival. He now hits the back end of Kurt Crumb's car. Pataska now avoids front wing damage, but has to check up coming down the Cooper Straight.
Yeah, and I think that was wise there to back out of that. I saw him being 3 wide. I was like, he's going to be on the outside. There's no way he's going to try and stick with that. And sure enough, he backed out of it. But yeah, nobody is getting away here. And it's still, I think everybody realistically in this top 7 is still within a chance of winning this race.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, Trevor Bobrovsky, the last of those respective cars you see in the back end of that grouping. Several other battle packs have now started to form up. Once though, Mayer and Henderson for 8th. You also have Martzoff and Cologne fighting for 13th. There's the side-by-side for the 8th place grouping starting to try and stay side-by-side. Henderson way hard to the inside rumble strips. Mayer all the way along the outside of the corner. Loses ground as Isaac Snyder, who's up 9 positions, joins the fray.
Yeah, see, Isaac Snyder was just trying to find out in the practice race everything he can't do in the feature, because he's been able to pass everyone cleanly so far. And this battle for 8th could very easily turn up to be a battle for a higher position if things go south up front, because I'm surprised all 7 of those cars are still running.
Especially with some of the aggression levels showcased, as now that lead group split off into 2 packs. Sam Harper is under attack from Dallas Pataska and Trevor Bobrovsky. Pataska trying to stay at the inside through Hale Woods Hill. To Druids they go. Pataska is clear inside the top 5. Travis Henderson as well has had another issue. He was in 8th position last time by. He now drops all the way back to 19th, make it 20th position.
I just want to add here, Justin, the reason that front pack has broken up, Dallas Pataska almost spun it at the end of last lap. He got a wheel on the grass going through this turn that they are now, and he got the car completely sideways, so that's what held up this second pack.
Keep in mind, that could have been the championship shakeup right there. Again, with Pete Herod in the race lead currently, Pataska needs to finish inside the top 10 to secure the title. Pressure still on for the 21 still. The Team Mad Machine having to hug the bottom through Druids once again, Christian. Monerwich, he is not giving up. And remember that speed from his heat. He's showcasing it. He's already past Banfield.
Yeah, he's looking really, really fast right now. And I think he's definitely a contender to win this race. And I would hesitantly say that he looks quicker than Herod right now, but as we've seen, even if you're leading the line with everybody stacked up, that's no guarantee that you're going to be able to pull away. So I think in the next couple of laps, we're going to see him try and get this move done, though.
Especially since he started carving a lot of time down. He closed up 4/10 in the final 5 laps of his heat. Now he wants the lead. Pete Herod gives him some space. Monerwich now takes the point. But now the switchback. Handsome Pete elects to back off. Now he's under attack. Ross Banfield wants to pass by the 21. Pete Herod cannot afford to lose this spot if he wants any shot still at a championship. Able to defend there nicely, Samuel.
Yeah, no, this is great, intense racing here. I was a little bit concerned after watching our first heat race about what kind of quality race we were going to see once all 20 cars got on track together. It's nice to see we still have a pack of cars racing for the lead, and Wayne Hutchinson, it looks like he's dropping down the order.
He's off the racetrack as well. He's had a spin, and it's a big one where he's lost his front wing. Pete Herod back under attack now for second. Half a second back of the race leader. The UDOX machine, though, wants to keep up with the leader. Locks up the right front tire this time through Druids. That's Handsome Pete, still preferred line on the inside. Slips and slides his way to the brakes and gets hit by Banfield. Banfield now checks up. Kirk Crum avoids hitting him. No damage to Banfield's wing.
This is bringing Pataska back into play, though. We thought he was pretty much out of this battle, but all this battling has now brought him back.
exactly.
Pete, I don't know if we can go to the replay there. I know we got a lot of action going on, so it might not be a wise idea. But Pete Herod went over the curb there in the previous turn. He almost completely lost his car.
I think that kind of shows how much he knows he needs to keep this spot, to keep his part of the championship equation well. He drops third on back. It's Dallas Pataska's race championship regardless here, Christian.
Yeah, and I think Pataska needs to keep that in mind, that really he's already in a position where he's done enough.
Exactly.
You know, so there's no real point getting involved in this fight. But you know, it's always nice to win.
Keep in mind, he's only won one single class event this season. The rest of them have come in multi-classes. To think about there, as Pete Herod has dropped back 8/10 now from on Airwitch. Ross Banfield trying to set things up. Pataska within 3 car lengths. Kirk Crum also stays in the choo-choo train. And it's to the point where Monerwich stayed on the left side, everyone to the right side, as Banfield dives to the right side for second.
And Pete doesn't put up too much of a fight. I know these guys want to be in front, but they've got to work with each other a little bit, and they're not doing that at all. This is just allowing David, I think, to pull away even more.
Exactly what the 69 machine wants to see in his mirror. But for Handsome Pete, it is the opposite of what he needs to do, especially since Dallas Pataska wants 4th. He dives side by side with Kirk Crum. Already past halfway, 9 to go this time by. One has been a wild feature race as Crum holds on to the 4th position for now. And it's getting to the point, too, where it's pretty clear. Paddock Hill Bend has become the passing spot compared to the heat races where it was Druids more so, Christian.
Yeah, and it's really surprising, actually, that the risk of making the pass in Paddock Hill Bend is proving to be worth it, because, you know, it is so risky to make a pass through there. You've got to have complete kind of commitment from both drivers to stay on their lines and not deviate. You know, the inside car can't run wide, the outside car can't come in. It's a very difficult corner to be side by side through, and yeah, it just looks like the risk reward is apparently enough for everybody to give it a go. And I think with Druids, the difficulty is getting the pass completed in the hairpin, so that you're not then on the outside into the next turn at the bottom of the hill, and I think that's probably what the difference is.
It has been beneficial for many drivers, but will Handsome Pete be able to do anything to move up one more spot here? Instead, he'll clip the sand trap as Dallas Pataska turns the fastest lap cleanly recorded in the race.
David Melnoritz also clipped the sand trap there exiting paddock, so he's making the odd mistake or two. All of these drivers are right on the ragged edge, going as fast as they are. We're watching a bit further back in the pack here. This is around about off a 10th place or so. By the way, I was joking earlier that if the top 7 all tangle, the driver in 8th will win. If that happens, that's Isaac Snyder.
How funny that would be. Well,
ironic.
So.
Yeah, but David's still holding a nice 6/10 of a second lead. Here is Isaac. Did he have a bit of damage to his rear wing?
Yes, he does. Flared up in the right rear wing, in fact. You see right there. Still your biggest mover of the race, plus 11.
The top 4 are close together. Again, I saw David sliding around a little bit, and it's cost him.
Yeah, he has seen his gap decrease a significant amount. Now everyone's back within drafting distance. After having about an 8/10 of a second advantage, it's down to under 4/10 through Sector 3, through clear ways. 6 to go this time. Get your cameras out, folks. This finish could be wild if this stays close. 6 to go.
Yeah, talking about getting your cameras out, that's one of the nice things about this circuit, obviously, is it's one of those rare road courses where, because it's in the bowl and because it's short, you can pretty much sit on the front grandstand and see the whole circuit with a pair of binoculars. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's definitely a great place for viewing for sure. Just wish it wasn't quite so far away from me, actually. Otherwise, I'd go there probably a bit more often. But I don't think that anybody in this top 5 is out of this right now. I think even Kurt Krum, who's a little bit disconnected from the back of the train there, I think even he has a shot to still win this. We don't know how much these guys are going to kind of tangle up towards the end of the race. Melneritz is definitely being reeled in by Bamfield right now.
Absolutely, to the point where it's now 3/10 with 5 laps to go. Manarwich starting to weave and break up the draft. He wasn't doing that for a good 5 to 6 laps prior to this one. And field forced to the middle.
It looked like Ross Bamfield was going to lose it going in the straight line there. The amount he was weaving across the circuit. Here we go. 5 laps to go. Things are really getting dicey. By the way, great battles throughout the whole field. There's actually a 3-way fight going on for 17th, but I think we want to watch this battle for now.
Yeah, this could be championship implications up here if anyone puts a tire on, especially. Now it's Pataska more so. And even more so if it's Pete Herod. These drivers wiggled their tires on through the corner, coming to 4 laps to go this time. Banfield now forced to weeble wobble down the straightaway. Down the Brabham straight they go. Can the 777 machine get side by side? Forced to take the long way around as Manarwich goes hard on the brakes. He goes for the crossover. Banfield crosses up the 69. Banfield to the race lead. Handsome Pete thinks about going to the middle. Banfield clears on by through Druids. Ross Banfield back to the point as once again Pete Herod trying to battle for second.
Oh, David, right on the gearbox of a race leader there, Banfield, and now he's got to go on the defensive as a 21 of Herod comes down the inside, but that's now the outside. They're battling for second. That's a bad idea. That's going to allow Banfield to run away.
Pete Herod forced to back off. Kurt Krum now dives inside the 21 machine for 3rd position. Pete Herod, though, with the momentum. 3 to go this time by. Pataska staying as the last car in this lead grouping, now in 5th position. He backs off, all while Banfield charges hard into the corner and nearly sideways with the smoke kicking up. Norwich now trying to play the blocker now as he went all the way to the inside trying to hold off the 21 into the corner, Christian.
Yeah, and a bit of a stack up behind there. Kurt Krum got half spun around by Pataska. Both of them still going. As we see an incident at Paddock Hill as well. So that's broken up that lead pack. There's now only 3 realistically in it with 2 laps to go as we come to the flag.
Coming up to 2 laps to go this time by. Right now, Pataska is right where he needs to be to win a Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year for the European region. But the question is going to be which driver wins this round.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's safe. We got a 3-car battle for first, a 4-car battle for 4th. And let's not forget, these drivers were banning wheels in these cars on lap number 3. So who knows what they're going to do on lap number 20. Here we go. 4th is on. The lead is on as well. Pete Herod has taken 2nd place.
He dived his way to the inside. He's not done yet, though. He clanged tires with Manarwich. He knows he needs to get it. As they go in the grass, Manarwich tries to hold on and does. White flag this time by. Banfield now leads by almost half a second plus. All while Pataska gets shuffled to 5th.
Yeah, every position Pete Herod gets, of course, helps him out championship-wise. I mean, it doesn't... Because if Pataska gets involved in an incident in that pack there, he could drop as far back as 19th. So Herod can't give up yet. Right now, the battle for the win is going to be between Banfield and Melneritz.
White flag has waved. The Druids. Manarwich over the gearbox of Banfield. Pete Herod watches on behind. Harder through the curbs this time is the 69. Half a lap to go for the second last round of the season. Manarwich has one last chance. Tries to build up the speed. Banfield slides. Manarwich to the inside. Side by side for the race lead. They make contact. A swing back. Manarwich shoves his way to the point. Checker flag waves. David Manarwich wins over Ross Banfield. And with Pete Herod finishing 3rd, Dallas Pataska has clinched the Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year for the European Pro region for the Major Series for 2021.
Yeah, the second pack stage single file, which was perfect for Pataska. He was able to get the finish he needed for the championship. What a great and appropriate finish to this race, though. It only made sense to have the leaders banning wheels after how aggressive they've been all race long.
Absolutely incredible, that finish. Unbelievable, Christian. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I was really worried that coming to the line there that one of them was going to just sort of get it a little bit wrong and then we were going to have two cars crossed up coming over the line. But no, that was a really great race. And I felt like Melneritz could probably win it. And I have to say I was kind of pulling for him when he was making that move on the last corner. I thought he was too far back. I thought he'd let Banfield get too far ahead. But no, it just got it done.
With that, we'll take a quick break. Post-race coverage coming up right after this.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in indoor series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to GSRC's coverage of the Major Series in its European region in the Pro Split, as the Formula Ford Festival put on a show. And that 69 car, Monerwich, came away with the victory by 0.043 seconds over Ross Banfield to win today's feature event. Pete Herod finishes in third. That does not help his situation whatsoever, to the point where he needed to be second or above to have any chance of mathematically bumping Pataska or keeping his championship hopes alive. Kurt Crum finishing fourth, but with the fifth either way, Pataska has won the Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year. Sam Harper, Trevor Borowski, Isaac Snyder, Brian Barnes, Josh Wolf round out your top 10, Christian.
Yeah, then George Gruber comes home in 11th, but he was up 6 spots from his 17th starting spot. Kodal Kalan did overcome his technical issues and comes home 12th. Didn't quite get that top 10. I thought he might be able to. Eric Mickey back there in 13th with Ryan Mayer, driver who was really promising in the heats, but unfortunately only comes home 14th. Colin Martsolf back there in 15th. David H. Baker wraps up the John King Trophy and comes home in 16th. Travis Henderson, another driver who showed a lot of promise, but unfortunately it just was not his day, and he comes home 17th. Ray Partridge back there in 18th. Tom Dreiling in 19th. And Wayne Hutchinson 1 lap down in 20th.
That's a look top to bottom at your running order, and keep in mind one driver, Kyle Graham, did not start for today. But the drivers are currently making their way slowly towards celebrations. But one driver who gets the chance to celebrate today, David Monerwich, who came away with a victory today here in the Formula Ford Festival. First things first, how are you feeling able to come away with the checkered flag? It took bumping and banging in the final corner to do it.
Oh man, I'm shaking. My first majors W in the first major season. I'm shaking. Oh my god, what a win. That was probably one of my best races in my iRacing career at all.
That was incredible to see. How was that trying to plan things out, knowing how difficult it was to hold on to the lead at times, let alone pass for the race lead?
Like, honestly, the pass for the race lead was relatively easy because I was held down by Pete, I think, massively. Like, that, I felt slow, so I decided to went for the lead. And see what I can do from that. That was, I think, lap 6 or 7. I immediately gained like almost a second lead, so I know that, okay, it's good, it's looking good, so no mistakes. I made few small mistakes though, so pack behind was able to catch me. And initially, then I thought that I took that early too early. That bit too early. But when I saw that Ross overshoot the brake into the last turn, I decided to sneak inside, and the last straight was just completely wild. It was completely wild. The margin of victory also pretty insane.
Absolutely incredible, that entire finish, but there's still one more race to go in the season. And you mentioned your first campaign. How would you describe how this has gone for you overall, knowing you've been quick, especially in the open wheelers throughout the campaign, and the last race just so happens to be open wheel racing at an oval?
The thing that it is an oval is pretty disadvantage for me, because we already did some setup sessions, and we discovered that it's basically be a pure setup race, which is not very good for us, because we might get limited time, but we will see what we can salvage from that. But we're probably gonna take into this race a little bit differently, because after this race we might have a pretty significant lead over the Bombshell in the team championship. So the last race will be basically just to defend the team championship as well. And also for me to defend what will be probably 5th place in general standings as well.
Absolutely. It's been incredible this season, especially with the speed showcased by you. Who do you want to thank for your run today?
I want to thank all my teammates. I want to thank my team leader Josh. I want to thank all our sponsors, the TFR Lab, JLT, and SimSpeed.
Congratulations on the victory today.
Thank you. It was.
David Manerwich coming away with the victory today. It was Ross Banfield who finished in second today in that photo finish. And that was incredible to say the very least. That second place runner, Ross Banfield, is with Christian Jauner.
Ross, it looked like it was a pretty tight battle there at the end, and obviously a little bit of wheel banging as you were coming across the line. It just took it away from you, but it looked a really strong performance all day long, and you've got to be overall relatively happy with how it went, right?
Oh, yeah. The wheel being unintentional completely. I was trying to get back in there to get my line tightened up, because it's pretty much the fastest line, so I was trying to give myself the best chance I had. But yeah, it was pretty tight to the end. I'm just happy to finally get a podium. Kind of had a series of unfortunate events this season, so feels good to kind of get the mojo going.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw a lot of drivers, especially through the heat races, were kind of struggling those first couple of laps with the cold tires. And can you talk us through a little bit like how you approach that on those laps? Because we saw a couple of drivers throughout the field who were being a little bit more aggressive and maybe being rewarded for it, whilst others were kind of taking it really easy just to make sure that they didn't kind of have a lap one spin. How do you balance that? How do you balance like the risk reward of how much you can push without, obviously having the spin and going to the tail end of the pack?
Yeah, some of that is kind of setup based. I know if you run like a stiffer roll bar, it's going to be really hard on the early game, but then in the later game you have a faster car, so it's kind of a balance between the two. And then you just kind of got to know the limits, especially turn one. That's the one that will kill you. And then the rest of the turns are pretty easy, except for the final turn. That's where you also lose time. So you kind of just got to know your limits and look for mistakes, and then kind of force your way in.
Yeah, speaking of knowing where people are going to make mistakes and forcing your way in, one thing that we saw a lot throughout the race was a lot of passes actually into Paddock Hill Bend. And, we were kind of expecting that we were going to see the passes into Druids with it being the hairpin and whatnot, but it looked like it was really difficult to actually clear someone through Druids, and then you were kind of in a too-wide situation that sort of flipped around, and you were at a disadvantage coming down to the bottom of the hill with the left-hander. So with that and people passing into Paddock Hill, how confident were you when you're kind of trying to make those moves, or if someone's trying to make those moves, like in terms of people were going to stick to their lines? Obviously the car on the outside has to not turn in and the car on the inside has to not run wide, and it looked really, really difficult from the outside, I have to say. So yeah, a great job by you guys to kind of not have contact through that. But yeah, in terms of passing points, where did you think was kind of at what point in the race was it enough reward to kind of go for those moves into Paddock Hill and whatnot?
So I guess it's if I have the outside and I see they're kind of holding the inside, I know they're going to have a suboptimal exit, and then that sets you up for Druids, where you can kind of take it to the inside and dive it late to try and cut the nose off, because you gotta get in front by Druids or else if they have the inside from the next corner, it's not beneficial. I was also looking at my relative. I didn't want the pack to catch back up because you see what happens. We're going 3 wide at one point. So that was avoiding all that.
And now for the final round, it's going to be at Motegi with the original, as I like to call it, IndyCar. You got any thoughts on what to expect for that round? Obviously, it's very, very different from this one.
Well, hopefully it's not my specialty, so I don't expect a stellar performance. I'm just hoping I can finish, maybe top 5. I'll be happy with that.
Well, definitely good luck for that round. And before we let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to today?
Sure, yeah. Shout out to all the guys running the majors, doing a great job. And then also shout out to the UDocs team. It's been fun running with them this year.
Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us. And yeah, good luck for the next round out at Motegi. Congratulations on the 2nd place today.
Thanks. See you guys.
Once again, that's Ross Banfield coming away with a strong run today. 2nd place in a photo finish. But the storyline entering today was the chance to clinch a title for the Pro Driver standings. 2021's European region Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year has been clinched. It is Dallas Pataska with Handsome Pete finishing in 3rd. Dallas now joins us in the broadcast booth. Dallas, you are a major series champion. With 1 race to go, you have clinched the title. How does it feel?
Feels amazing. Been running in this league for a few years now, off and on. Not always putting together full seasons, but it feels good. I think this will be the first season I run every race, and it's. I'm happy to say that it's going to be a championship season. First and foremost, I got to thank Christian Schallner. I know he's in here. If it wasn't for him, this championship wouldn't have happened. So I owe a lot of my success to him, first and foremost. And yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting race to try to cap this off, but that's why I knew over the last couple of rounds that I've been racking up wins, how important it was to have as much of a points buffer as possible coming into these last 2 rounds. I'm really glad I was able to get this done at this round, because this upcoming Motegi race, I got no clue about, no experience in those cars, nothing. So it feels very good to be able to get that done before the last round of the season.
And talk about some of the major challenges, because you mentioned Christian Schallner being a big part of your success this season. What was it like trying to battle through the campaign, knowing your history with the major series, having good speed, but how was having that challenge in some cases of breaking fully through consistency-wise?
Well, you said it. I've always had pretty good pace in this league. I've been able to get the speed I need, but a lot of times I would just get caught up in carnage and poor strategy calls. Like early in the season, Tim would always beat me off of strategy. But really, it was just going into the season focusing on getting the cars comfortable to me so that I can do what I need to do behind the wheel, and then just making sure I'm making smart decisions out there on the track. This season, if I were to count, there were numerous times where I just backed out of situations just because I didn't feel comfortable with it, or just taking the long-term approach to the points championship, and that I think that's really what sealed the deal, is not capitalizing on the rounds that I was strongest, but not losing points on the rounds that I was weak at. And I think that's ultimately why I'm talking here today as a new major series champion.
And on that note, you mentioned some of the difficulties that come into play potentially for the last race. What now is that focus like to try and keep the momentum going? Not just this season, but to try and do again in the future. Is that something in mind, or is that more focused on the now?
I mean, it's good to take a little bit of a break and reminisce in the past season, but I'm still going out trying to win this last race and carry that momentum into next season. I will be back, and I plan on going for back-to-back championships. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I know it's back to the grindstone as quick as can.
Anyone you want to thank for being a part of your championship run this season?
Well, he wasn't. I wouldn't say he's too much of a part of it, but in general, this one goes to Christian. He's been a big help, and then of course I'd just like to thank everybody over at Satellite, Mike, and all the organizers over at Majors for putting on this incredible league across all these regions, and providing a good atmosphere to run a lot of different and varying disciplines. We can maybe leave off the Skip Barber for next season, Mike, if you're listening. I'd appreciate that. But yeah, in general, thanks for you guys. You guys always put on a great broadcast, and hope you guys are back for it next year.
Thank you very much for the time, Dallas. Congratulations on winning the championship for the Pro Driver standings.
Thanks, guys.
That's Dallas Pataska. He is your 2021 Mario Andretti Champion Driver of the Year for the European region. I'll start with you, Christian, on that note. Dallas Pataska credited a big part of that run to you. What does that feel like for you, knowing you helped foster a champion?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool for sure, and I definitely appreciate him giving me the shout out there. I think he's probably giving me more credit than I deserve, because, I mean, every now and again throughout the year, we've kind of gone back and forth a little bit with setup and whatnot for kind of events that we're both a bit unsure on or whatnot. But, you know, I mean, the main thing is that, I mean, he gives me a shout out, but he's still driving the car, you know, he's still making the decisions and everything. And it's really, it's totally 100% his championship and whatnot. And I think, I mean, I've known Dallas for quite a few years now, and he's always been a very, very, very fast driver. I mean, in things like, especially the super late model and whatnot, I've always kind of struggled to keep with him. And I've always felt, actually, that if he could kind of link it all together, that he would probably actually be a quicker driver than myself, and would be able to actually definitely win more things than I've managed to win. So it's good to see him pick up this championship. I feel like he's missed out on it the past couple of years when really he definitely had the pace to do it. Just it didn't come together, and obviously there was kind of a lot of bad luck, and then a couple of maybe self-inflicted mistakes. And this year he just hasn't had those. You know, like he was saying, okay, maybe he hasn't won as much, but on the races where he wasn't going to win, he's picked up as many points as possible. And I think that's really the key to any championship. I like winning races, and I know Dallas does too. And winning races obviously is a big part of winning a championship, but you can still lose. I mean, even in this league for myself, I think back in 2018, that's what happened to me. I think I won the most races, but because I had a lot of DNFs and really bad races, and amongst them, some my own fault, some not my own fault, it meant that I didn't win the championship. So I guess that really puts across the importance of when it isn't your day and you know that you're not the fastest driver out there, that you still try and maximize. And you know, it's painful. It's painful to be out there knowing that you're not contending for the win, but that you just have to pick up as much as you can. And I think he's really matured over the past year or two in that sense, and that's why he's been able to do this today. I mean, you even saw it today. I don't think I think even he would accept that he wasn't the quickest today. Yet he picked up the top 5. He picked up what he needed, and that's the thing that you have to do on days when you know that you're not the quickest and that you're probably not going to win the race.
Your thoughts on everything, Samuel, especially crowning a champion and having such a thrilling finish to boot?
Yeah, well, it's interesting hearing a couple of the drivers talk reasonably at the end of a race there, saying, yeah, sometimes you do have to take second or third or fourth, because we didn't see a heck of a lot of that today, I don't think. We definitely saw some great racing, some wheel banning out there in these Skip Barber cars on this Brands Hatch race course. Fortunately, especially during the feature race, there wasn't a whole lot of carnage. We had 19 of our 21 starters finish on the lead lap, all covered by about 40 seconds or so, which is definitely a shout out to the whole entire field there, especially considering, you know, they're not racing these Skip Barber cars on a weekly basis, and the Brands Hatch circuit is definitely not an easy one. But it's great seeing the champion crown today. I don't want to make too many spoilers, but there have been a couple of racing series in the real world today that have crowned champions. So it's nice to see, and you know, some people lift up some trophies and get, you know, wrap up this 2021 calendar year with some success stories and makes us optimistic towards the future to see what kind of racing we do have next year, although I still know we got one round left to go.
And that's the critical thing to remind many of, because there were still points and wins on the line for the last round of the season. That goes Twin Wing Motegi's Oval, Christian, and keep in mind that is going to be basically open wheel racing again. To close things out, your quick thoughts on Twin Wing Motegi?
I think everybody's got to watch out for the way that Boost builds on the throttle on the restarts, and I think that's going to be kind of the feature of that event. So yeah, it's a tricky one. Restarts and pit strategy is going to be key there. Obviously, it's a 1.5 mile oval, and it's a bit of a unique 1.5 mile oval, to be honest. So that's kind of cool, and obviously it's a car that basically nobody has raced in many years. So I think everybody's pretty much starting from scratch in that sense. I think it has the potential to be a very fun race. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of cautions for that one, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we see that we get consistent cautions after restarts and whatnot, just because of how difficult it is to kind of pull the car away. So if anybody is racing those and is listening, totally practice restarts. It will absolutely be worth your time.
It's going to be an interesting race to close things out for 2021's chapter of the Major Series in its European region. On that note, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for today's racing action from Brands Hatch. We'd also like to thank the Major Series for organizing this amazing series, as well as shout out the charity represented by this event once more, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. They were the first humane society established in North America, and today, one of the largest in the world. Last year alone, the ASPCA assisted more than 100,000 animals. For more information about the ASPCA, go to www.aspca.org. I'd also like to take the time to thank the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed on screen. Thanks go to Jude Lalonde, who provides your wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more for great work. Thanks to the team today in Christian, Samuel, Zach, and Dougie. Find more information about GSRC at globalsimracingchannel.com or social media listed on your screen. Also, check out the merchandise for sale at simracingmerch.com/GSRC. Keep a link in the description of the YouTube version of our broadcast below. Speaking of which, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as hit the notification bell so you don't miss a moment through the Global Sim Racing channel. As talked about with a few of our drivers, and as we just discussed, there is one more round this season. That is the Indy Japan 300. That will take place on the oval. Keep in mind that will utilize the Dallara 2009 chassis for the IndyCar machines. That takes place November 7th, 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time is when coverage begins. Don't forget as well, the Major Series and its Americas region takes to the track tonight for the SCCA runoffs at Road Atlanta's short course. Coverage starts approximately 7:45 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on screen, so check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.